Let's talk about Blade Runner 2049. This movie's getting amazing reviews. Everyone who's watching it loves it, but nobody's watching it. Some people are saying that it's an injustice, that the public doesn't want good movies. I don't think that's the case. There's a reason the general public isn't watching this movie, and it's because this movie isn't your average Hollywood remake/sequel. For those of you who don't know, I'll give a brief description of the premise of these movies, just so you get an idea of what I'm talking about here. To keep things simple, both of these movies are centered around a Blade Runner. A Blade Runner is basically a cop that hunts down and kills replicants. Replicants are artificial humans created primarily for slave labor in this world. Both of these movies focus on the relationship between replicants and humans and explore what it means to be human. Like it or not, the original Blade Runner is one of the most influential sci-fi movies ever made. It created a genre all on its own. Ghost in the Shell, Deus Ex, stories like this wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Blade Runner. But here's the thing, when Blade Runner came out, it didn't do so well. The studio meddled with the production of the movie a little too much, and if you watch the theatrical release compared to the final cut, the one that Ridley Scott had full control over, you'll see how different things were. Blade Runner wasn't popular until way later. It's a cult classic. So how do you make a sequel for a cult classic? Well, usually when Hollywood revisits an old franchise, they do it in a specific way. They remake the movie. Let's call this the Jurassic World effect. These movies are basically remakes of the original with callbacks, Easter eggs, returning characters, the whole shebang. They're fun to watch, yeah, but they're pretty forgettable when compared to the original that they're based on. I don't remember anything from Jurassic World, except for that one scene where that cute innocent lady gets brutalized by dinosaurs for no reason. Here's why Blade Runner 2049 is so good. Because it stands on its own as a full sequel. A real sequel. You know how the second Alien movie is awesome just like the original? Well, that's because it's a totally different movie, with a different director. This movie's like that. It's a full-on sequel, not a remake. It doesn't rely on any elements from the previous movie to tell its story either. This movie doesn't have the callbacks like Force Awakens does. It doesn't need them. You can tell that it's the same movie because the world feels the same without directly ripping it off. One way that the movie does this that I really enjoy is how the characters talk like they do in the original movie. In Blade Runner, everything's kind of dreamlike, and everybody talks in kind of a strange way, and a lot of characters do that in this one too. While I'm on that subject, I should probably point out that this movie requires that you watch the original in order to get the full picture. It does not care about the viewers that haven't seen the original. That's kind of badass. You can watch Jurassic World without having seen the original, and you're honestly not going to miss out on much. This is also why 2049 isn't really doing that great, though. This movie was marketed towards people who have seen the original. In the trailers, they show off Harrison Ford like, oh yeah guys, that's right, Rick Deckard is back. But general audiences are like, okay, I don't know who that is. The trailers don't even explain what a Blade Runner is, because they assume you already know, but most people don't. At the same time, having seen every trailer for this movie before it came out, I got to enjoy the film without knowing anything about it. And if you've seen my video on trailers, you know how important that is to me. You get a lot of big story moments in this movie, all starting right at the first scene. I'm not going to spoil anything, but just know that this movie is full of ways to defy your expectations. This is not the same movie as the original at all. When you do see plot elements return, it's genuinely exciting because those elements are presented naturally. Plus, the scale of the story is much bigger now. The story of the first movie took place entirely in future California, in this one city. But the sequel says, hey, I wonder what things look like outside the city. The larger scope extends to the themes as well. While the first movie was pretty one-note with its themes, the sequel has a lot to say. And as much as I love the first Blade Runner, I have to admit, it's mostly style over substance. The themes of human nature are kind of obvious, and there really isn't much of a story. The plot that is there is pretty predictable too. The sequel takes all of the elements of the original and expands on them. There is a lot happening in this movie. All the characters have their own motivations and stories as well. I found myself invested in just about every character in the film. There isn't a single bad performance or weak character. Real quick, I'm also going to mention a few other things that are great in this movie. I mentioned how the performances are great, but the writing is also really good. There's a lot of subtlety in some of the lines, and on my second viewing, I was noticing double meanings behind a lot of the things that were said in this film. The music doesn't really express a variety of genres like the original did, but its oppressive and pounding nature fits the tone of this movie pretty well. Visually, this movie is amazing as well. There's kind of an intimate scene in the middle of the movie, and for those of you who've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But it has one of the weirdest and most interesting effects that I've seen in a movie in a while. There are also some brief action scenes in this movie that break up the monotony, and when I say brief, I mean brief. This adds to the realism of the film as well. The characters don't break out into a 5-minute karate duel. The fights are brief and gritty. That being said, action isn't just thrown in to keep things from getting boring. Every action scene is in service to the story and it serves a purpose. These are just a few noteworthy things that I enjoyed, but everything else I liked kind of verges into spoiler territory, and I want people to watch this movie, so we're not going to get into that. Before I saw this movie, as I was heading to the theater, I was mocking the film because I thought it wasn't going to be as good as the original, which is one of my favorite movies. I usually don't like sequels like this. I hate Jurassic World, if you couldn't tell already. But this movie is just as good as the original, and in many ways it's even better. Hollywood doesn't make movies like this. They usually take a beloved property and rehash so much old content that it becomes difficult to enjoy the final product. You might get a fun movie that's good for one viewing in the theater, but that's gonna be it. This isn't a movie for general audiences. It's amazing, yes, but it's not Mad Max Fury Road. It's not the kind of instant classic that anybody can enjoy, and that's fine. The movie isn't doing well financially because unlike Jurassic World or The Force Awakens, it's not designed to please everybody. I think that's a respectable thing. Blade Runner 2049 stands on its own as a new story. A movie doesn't need to make $1 trillion in order to be good. I never thought I'd end up saying this, but Blade Runner 2049 is easily among my favorite movies of the year. 9 out of 10, damn good movie. Please go watch it. Hi guys, it's me. I'm in the box today. Isn't that cool? If you guys couldn't tell by the video you just watched, I'm sick. So that's why this one was a little short. If the demand is high enough in the future, I might actually just go scene by scene in this movie and actually break it down, because I liked it a lot. I haven't done that in a while. Coming up next week is a Star Wars video, because I haven't talked about that enough. And I figured I was going to tell you guys what's been going on, because not a lot of videos have been coming out lately. But once I get better, everything's going to go back on track. Alright, so bye guys. Have a good one.